Hey everyone, this is the Introduction to Computing and Programming in Python, a multimedia approach, chapter 13, making text for the web. So the chapter objectives for chapter 13 are we're going to gain some basic skill with HTML. We're going to automatically generate HTML for input data, like an index page for a directory of images, and to use databases to generate content. The computer science goals for this chapter are to use another number base, hexadecimal, for specifying red, green, and blue colors, to distinguish between XML and HTML, to explain what SQL is, what it has to do with relational databases, to create and use sub-functions, utility functions, and to demonstrate one use for hash tables, dictionaries. So to start, we're going to cover HTML, which is Hypertext Markup Language. HTML is kind of SGML, Standardized General Markup Language. SGML was invented by IBM and others as a way of defining parts of a document completely apart from how the document was formatted. HTML is a simple form of SGML, but with a similar goal. The idea, or the original idea of HTML, was to define the parts of the document and their relation to one another without defining what it was supposed to look like. The look of the document would be decided by the client or the browser and its limitations. For example, a document would look different on a PDA than on your screen or on your cell phone, or Internet Explorer versus Netscape versus Opera versus Google Chrome versus Firefox, whatever. So the evolution of HTML. But with the explosive growth of the web, HTML has become much more. Now people want to control the look and feel of their page down to the pixels and font. Plus, we want to grab information more easily out of web pages, leading to XML, the extensible markup language. XML allows for new kinds of markup languages that say explicitly identify prices or stock ticker codes for business purposes. There are three kinds of HTML languages. Original HTML is simple, what the earliest browsers understood. Then they introduced CSS, which is cascading style sheets. It's a way of defining more of the formatting instructions than HTML allowed. And then there's XHTML, which is HTML redefined in XML terms. It's a little more complicated to use, but more standardized, more flexible, and more powerful. And it's the future of where the web is going. When to use each. Bigger sites should use XHTML and CSS. XHTML enforces accessibility requirements so that your documents can be read by Braille browsers and audio browsers. HTML is easiest for simple websites. For most of this lecture, we'll be focusing on XHTML, but we'll just say HTML generically. We're not going to get into much of the formatting side of XHTML nor CSS detailed, and isn't the same on all browsers. Markup means adding tags. A markup language adds tags to regular text to identify its parts. A tag in HTML is enclosed by uh, angle brackets or less than symbol, greater than symbol, whatever you want to call them. Most tags have a starting tag and an ending tag. A paragraph is identified by a P and at its start and a P with a angle bracket less than or backslash P at its end. A heading is identified by h1 at its start and less than sign slash h1 at its end. So you'll see the difference between the start tag and the end tag. The ends typically will have that slash at the end of them. HTML is just text in a file. We enter our text and our tags in just a plain old ordinary text file. Use an extension of .html or .htm if your computer allows 3 characters to indicate HTML. JES works just fine for editing and saving HTML files. Just don't try to load them. So part of a web page. So in this example, um, you can see that we define the document type HTML. We create a header. So you'll see the head tag there's the opening head tag. Inside the head, we have a title, the simplest possible web page. So you see the start and the end tag for title, and then you'll actually see the end of the head tag as well. So after the head, then we have the body. So the body, you'll see the start tag. Inside the body, you have the header H1. I think there's H1 through H8 that you can use um, as possible headings. Then you'll see the paragraph tag. This is a paragraph in the simplest possible web page. And you'll see the ending tag for that. Then you'll see the ending tag for the body. Then you'll see the ending tag for the HTML. So you should notice that um, they start and end in the same fashion, right? So HTML starts, and HTML is the first thing that starts. HTML is the last thing that ends, right? Head starts, then there's title. Title ends. Head ends. And you'll see that's contained within this little shape here. Then body. Inside body is header, that ends, paragraph, that ends, and then body ends inside. So you'll see that those are like kind of containers for these other tags that are inside there. So we can actually look at this example. Here's W3 School, something you guys can get familiar with to definitely look up different things with HTML um, and general code questions in general. But you'll see this is a pretty similar example. Right, so we have the document type, HTML, there's the head, there's the title, head, inside the body, H1, P. Like, so again, these spaces here don't matter at all. So I could say this is a test heading using H1. What we're going to do is we're actually going to copy this. Paste, 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 paste. So we're going to make this 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to make these 2, 3, 4, oops, 5. So I run this. So then as you can see, as I use the different headers or the different headings, you can see H1 is big, H2, 3, 4, and 5, and then it gets smaller as it goes. So those are just an example of what you can do. Again, you can always practice whatever you want your website to look like using W3 Schools, or you can do it locally as well um, on your computer, just saving a TXT file or a text file, just saving it as a .html file. You open it with your browser, and you're good to go. So you can actually copy this if you wanted to. We'll just actually go through it real quick. So we're going to open Notepad. We're going to save this, save as. We'll save it on desktop, test.html. File, save as. I'm going to open, find the test.html. I'm going to open this here. Cool. And you'll see that it's pointing to my HTML file, my test.html, and it has exactly what I just copied. So again, we just did it with W3 Schools, right? We did it here. We copied this. We did it in a notepad, um, and we could do the same thing. So you start with a docutype, like I said, and it tells the browser what kind of language you're using below. So anything below this doc tag or this document type tag, um, the browser will know how to handle it. So the whole document is enclosed in HTML opening and close tags. The heading is enclosed with head. That's where you put the title. Then the body is enclosed with body, and that's where you put the headings, H1, and then the paragraph. So what it looks like in WebKit. So then this is the example that they did in the book. We just showed you an example that we did. Looks similar. So is this a web page? Of course it is. The only difference between this and one on the web is that the one on the web, A, has been uploaded to a web server, and B, is placed in a directory that the web server can access. We'll see the networking lecture. So what if you forget the doc type or an ending tag? It'll probably work. Browsers have developed a way to deal with all kinds of weird HTML. But if the browser has to guess, then it may guess wrong. That is, not what you expected or meant to do. So which is when your document may look different on different browsers. Other things in there. So we're simplifying these tags a bit. More can go in the head. Maybe JavaScript, references to documents like CSS, right? The body tag can also set colors. So we have body BG color, which is background, right? And we have it to set it to 6 Fs. Text equals 6 zeros. Link is a certain color. A link, so that's active link. V link, all these different things. And these are actually setting RGB values. A tiny tutorial on hexadecimal. So you know decimal number is base 10. So that's our 0 through 16, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. And we've heard a little bit about binaries probably. 0, 0, 0, 0 is 0, 0, 0, 0, 1 is 1, 0, 0, 1, 0 is 2, and so on and so forth. So hexadecimal is base 16. That's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F, 10. That's 16 base 10. Hexadecimal colors in HTML. So FF0000 is red. 255 for red, FF, 0 for green, and 0 for blue. 0000FF is blue. That's 0 for red, 0 for green, and 255 for blue. And then we can see the other examples for hexadecimal colors as below, where all zeros is black, right, because it's the absence of color, and white is all 255 for all three colors because white is the presence of color, right, of all colors. So there are 6 levels of headings defined in HTML, H1 through H6. Lower numbers are larger, more prominent. Right? So H1 is the biggest, H6 is the smallest. You can do things like EM for emphasis, I for italic, B for boldface, big for bigger fonts, small for smaller fonts. Some of these are actually not actually used either. Like big for sure is not used, emphasis is not used. So although they mention it in the book, and you can definitely use them, they probably are going to be supported by the browser that you are using. Just as a best practice, some of this is not used. So TT for typewriter font. Let's actually see if W3 Schools even knows what TT is. So if we do TT like this, and we do T/TT, we hit run. Oh, it actually does surprisingly know what TT is. So that is accessible to use. Pre-formatted is pre, uh, the tag, block quote, subscript, and superscript, and so on and so forth. So you can see in this example, we have a mixture of all these different tags we just went over, and you can see how they're outputted here. I definitely recommending stopping at this point and just creating a local file in HTML on your own computer, and just open it in Chrome or open it in Firefox or whatever, or Safari or whatever you're using, and just see how it looks, and get familiar with how the tags start and end, their process of how they fit together, and get familiar with what the head looks like, get familiar with what the body looks like, what's inside there, what's expected to be inside there, and how to put together this HTML document fully so it makes sense for you guys. So then we have some finer control, right? So in this example, inside the paragraph, the second paragraph, we can see that we actually say font color equals green. And then the output is green where it says Happy St. Patrick's Day. Um, Similarly, on the paragraph beneath that, we have font size is +2, and above that we actually have font face is Helvetica, which is a different font that they're actually using altogether. So you can see that we have this finer control using font specifically to show on the web page exactly what we want it to look like. So breaking a line. Line breaks are part of formatting, not content. So they were added grudgingly to HTML. Line breaks don't have text within them, so they include the ending slash within them. Right, so we just use the BR tag. Let's try this here. So we're going to do BR slash like this. And let's put one before here. We'll do one here, and we'll do one after here. Actually, that makes sense. So we're not actually going to see anything, but it's going to be a space within. Let's see if we do this within a paragraph. What happens? So I'm going to put this right here. I actually feel like this is not accepting this. Um, oh, so actually the book, it looks like it's actually wrong. So actually it looks like it's just BR now. It's not actually, it doesn't actually include the end tag anymore. So make sure you note that. Again, some of these tags you don't use, which is why in this example I'm not familiar with the BR. I mean, I've used it previously, but um, there's some things you just don't use. In your examples, go through them for sure and use them. if you make your first web page, go for sure and use them. But you just don't use them as frequently as maybe this book would allude to. Regardless, make sure you don't have the slash because it's not going to work. We just learned that through W3 Schools. Again, a great resource to use as you go through learning HTML and as you go through learning code in general. So we're adding a break, so we can see that's what it looks like. We just tested it with on our website, so we know. So how about we add an image? So like break, it's a standalone tag. Image, and then we say source equals, and then we actually say the file path to that JPEG or PNG or SVG or whatever the file that it is. So what goes inside the quotes is the path of the image, like I said. If it's in the same directory, you don't need to specify the path. If it's in a subdirectory, you need to specify the subdirectory and the base name. You can walk a directory by going up to a parent directory with dot dot. You can also provide a complete URL to an image anywhere on the web. So here's an example. We see that um, all the top looks normal, where we have our header, we have our body, but inside the body, you'll notice we have image, source, and the source equals media sources slash butterfly. So what do we think that means? What this means is that where the index.html pages or the base page, that they're in that same level, that same directory level, there's a media sources folder or a directory. And then inside the media sources directory, there's a file called butterfly.jpg. So there's no dot dot like this mentioned, right? This is if we're going up to the parent. The parent is the level above. So let's actually take a quick example. Let's go here and let me do a new folder. Let me go inside here. So I'm going to create a new folder inside here. I'm going to say test. Okay. And I'm going to go inside here. I'm going to say test again. I'm making a folder test 2. Sorry. Test 2. Okay. So now if we look here, test 2 is inside test 1. So the parent of test 2 is test 1. So if I was inside the test 2 folder, which I am right now, and I wanted to access something inside test, right, I would have to say dot dot slash. So I have to go up a level. Um, I can't really show in this example without actually doing it. Let me save. All right, I'm actually gonna save this test here. File. All right, let's actually continue. Because I think it makes enough sense when you actually just do it. So it's just as simple as putting your files where they need to go. Um, when you go ahead and do, let's actually see the two example. All right. All right, we're gonna continue. So basically, this is just showing you that you need to specify directly where your file path is, and especially if you go to turn in a an assignment and you tell me that your file is in like your C drive, and it's users, and it's, you know, I'll say the username is Shenzi, for example, 'cause that's my dog's name. So if it's users, Shenzi, pictures, my picture, right? If it's a weird thing, if it's a weird file path like that, if I try to run that same program, it's going to fail, right? Because I'm running it locally on my computer. So my username is Steven, right? It's not Shenzi. So if you turn your example in and it's not going to run on my computer, it's not going to open fine because it doesn't know how to get there, I can't give you credit for showing an image, right? Because it's not working. So what you need to do is, like this says, you need to use the relative path, right? So there's two different types of paths. There's an absolute path and there's a relative path. Um, they're different because let's see if we can do this. Okay, so what is an absolute path? We'll look at this real quick. Okay. So an absolute path, right? There's two types of paths, like we said. There's relative and absolute. All right, no examples. Just trying to see an example. Okay, so here, right? Okay, so right here, for example, this would be a absolute path, whereas this would be a relative path. I want to see if there's one that. Okay, so in this example, right, we go up to the parent, right, because it's dot slash. We go up one level, like here, and we go up. This goes up two levels, right? Dot dot slash file dot php. We can also. Not, okay, again, here's another example. Completely relative, and then there's absolute. I think that once you play with these examples, you'll get it for sure. So here's what I was looking for. So you have D drive documents something dot doc or E drive music good music dot MP3, right? I don't have those same files on my computer. They don't exist, right? So you're gonna have to do something like this when you turn your assignments in. You're gonna say I'm gonna go up a level and it's images, and because you're gonna turn when you submit your web page, you're gonna submit the entire folder. So when you turn that in, um, I will have that images file. I will have the images file. So this relative or this yeah, this relative path will work. This absolute path will not work. Again, make sure that's clear because I've had a lot of students in the past turn in absolute paths and I had to mark them down because it was not working on my computer. So test it on your computer to make sure it's going to work. That was a lot. That was a lot going off on the tangent. But continuing, this is how you use an image tag, and that's how the file path is working. So we're parameters to image tags. You can specify width and height in image tags, right? So we have a simple header, we have the image source, we have a break, and then in the one below that we say width equals 100. Then in the one below that we say height equals 100, and then in the one at the very bottom we actually specify both width and height. So alt in images. So some browsers like Audio Braille, they really can't show images, right? Or say your image fails to load for whatever reason. Perhaps it doesn't exist, right? Like we just covered. You can use an alternative text to be displayed instead of the image in those cases, right? So this is going to say, here's my image. It's mediasources.flower1.jpg. And if it doesn't exist, or if the browsers like audio browser, browser need to see it or read it, if they need to read it, then it's actually going to say a flower instead. So you still kind of know what it's going to be, even though you really can't see what the picture is. Other options in image tags include align left or align right, H space, V space, align text top, will align the top of corresponding text. So definitely try these out. See what you can do. Be creative. See how far you can take HTML, and you definitely might love it. It's a way to be super creative, and it's fun that we can create our own web pages, and you know that the people at Facebook or the people at CNN or whatever are when it comes down to it, they're making web pages too, and you're doing something just as similar. So it's fun to check it out. So how about a link? So we use links all the time, right? When we click on the most recent notification on Facebook, or if we're reading the Google News and we need to look up what the latest with the president is, or whatever, right? So links have two main parts to them. There's a destination URL and then something to be clicked on to go to the destination, right? The link tag is A for anchor. So we can see there's the A tag, and we have href, and then there's the link cc.gatetech.edu, and then Mark Guzdiel or whatever it is, and then inside there is the actual thing that's going to be clicked. So in this case, we click on Mark Guzdiel's name, and it's actually going to take us directly to his cc.gatetech.edu webpage. So what does it look like? So we've all seen these links before, right? They're underlined, they're purple or they're bluish or whatever the color they are. So in this example, we can see that they have in the paragraph tag, they have an anchor tag, right? and it points to mediacomputation.org, and then in the part that's clickable itself is the words the media computation pager, or sorry, page, because it's in the anchor tag. So how about lists? There's order number lists, and then there's unordered lists, right, which is a bulletin. So you can see inside we have ordered list, we have list item, right, and we have two list items here, two list items here. But then this actually ends up outputting just like as we can see the dots or the numbers. What about a table? So we make a table. In this example, we start with a table tag. We have table row. Then we have table data (TD). We have table row again, and so on and so forth. And you'll see kind of how it works just based on looking what the HTML structure looks like, and then based on the output. So you can see we have a column, column 1, column 2, and then below that we have a row, another row again, and then table data element in column 2, and then the table closes. So there's lots more to HTML. There's frames. We can have sub-windows within a window within different HTML content. Anchors can have target frames. We can have divisions or divs. Horizontal rules, the HR tag. Applets, JavaScript, etc. There's a ton. So the best way to learn HTML is look at pages. View source all the time, especially when there's something new and cool that you've never seen before. There's lots of good online tutorials like W3 Schools, and there are definitely many good books. But HTML is not a programming language. Using HTML is called coding, and it is about getting your codes right. But it's not about coding programs. HTML doesn't have loops and ifs and variables and data types and the ability to read and write files. But the bottom line, HTML does not communicate process. But we can use programs to generate HTML. For example, here's a Python program, if you will, right? And we write a function called, we define it called make page, and it says file equals open, and we open this HTML page, and then we just write, and we actually take all the HTML that we wrote previously, and we just write it out to that file. So what this is going to do is it's going to output this entire HTML file to this generated.html. So how does Amazon and eBay work? So they work by generating a catalog as web pages. Nobody types up all those product HTML pages. Rather, the data is in a database, and there are programs that put the data into a database. So a catalog page generator. So you can see in this example, um, we have a function called make catalog, and it includes product, image, and price as three inputs. So what we do is we can actually use those variables within our HTML document that's generated. So you'll see here, for example, we have a string which includes the doc type, the HTML, the head, the title, catalog page for, and then we use the input variable product right here as an input to the string that's actually going to be printed. So say I say catalog product. So I say I want to enter water, a string called with the word water in it, as my product parameter. So then when I say catalog page for, it's actually going to print the word water there. So we would say catalog page for water. Then if you continue down, it would say water is the greatest. And then it says, you were so lucky you have found this page. You have the opportunity to buy water for the low price of, and then that's where we insert our price. So it's gonna convert the price we enter to a string. So str, right? That's our conversion. And then we're going to insert price. So if I say my water's 50 cents, right? And then it says, just take a look at this beauty. And then there's actually the image. So the image right there is actually going to be a file path, right? So we can pass in three objects, right? We pass in the product name, we pass in the image path, and we pass in the price. And what this will do is it's going to generate HTML code to a file called catalog.html, and it's actually going to be fully specific to the variables that we actually called it with. So this is how we can generate these similar pages to Amazon and eBay, right? We can generate these pages on the go by just reusing them with variables. So what does this look like, right? So in this example, we call the exact same function. We pass in seahorses as our product. We pass in seahorses.jpg as our file path. We give it the price of $32.75. So then we see seahorses is the greatest, which bad English, but that's fine. You are so lucky you have found this page. You have the opportunity to buy seahorses for the low, low price of $32.75. Just take a look at this beauty, and then there's a picture of a seahorse. Get one today. Right, so I could call the same exact thing with water, like we previously mentioned. I could pass in my make catalog function, water. I could say water.png, and I could say 42 cents or whatever we said, 50 cents, and we could have the exact same catalog page generated for water as well. So what about a home page editor? So we could actually have another function called make homepage. We pass in two parameters, name and interest. And then again, we write our document out, and it takes those variables that we have into our function, and it generates HTML code. So again, Python's not this magical HTML code writer. It's not this magical HTML code generator. Python is just doing what it's telling it. You're telling it to do. You're telling it something as simple as here's some words, here's a file, put these words into the file. However the file gets generated is up to you, right? So you can use W3 Schools and you can generate your HTML. Then maybe if you want to make it generic, like and use one of these functions, you take out the things that are specific for that web page, and then you make it generic, right? But all you're copying is you're copying the text and you're throwing it into a string and you're shoving it to a file. That's it. Python's not smart. HTML is not smart. Nothing's smart. You're doing it all yourself. So you need to understand how to create a web page manually first, and then you make your Python program generate that page. Because again, Python's not smart. HTML is not smart. You're doing it all yourself. So in this example, we call make homepage with the word barb as the name and horses as the interest. And then you can see what we're going to get generated, right? This is the generated output of that function that we just wrote on this page here, right? And it looks great, right? We can see the doc type, everything looks fine, everything looks normal. It's specific to barb or whatever variables we passed in. So we can see barb's homepage and so on and so forth there. What about an improved homepage generator though? How do we make it even better? So in this example, we pass in two things, but we broke it down even more. So we can actually break down our functions so that it's more understandable. So what if we want to write a function called define doc type, and all it does is return the string doc type. So you can see we open the file in the first line, we write the doc type, which is just this line. Then it says write the title, which is a function down here. The title is just it takes in a title string and it returns that entire string, the HTML, the head, the title string, the title, and then the head, right? You can see that HTML is not closed, notably not closed, right? So then we print the title, we print the body, right? Again, body open, body close. Oh, but then there's the HTML, right? And and that makes sense. So you can also use sub functions to make things more readable. One general rule of thumb is a function and or a method should not be longer than the length of a pencil. Right. So if you take a pencil and you hold it up to your computer screen, if your function's longer than that pencil, break it apart. Right. We can break apart as functions as small as we want to. Really, the use is because we write functions because programmers are lazy, right? We as programmers, we don't want to do things a lot, right? We have loops to do that. If we're going to repeat something, we have for loops, we have while loops. We can program it to do it and make it we can make it repeat. So if we're going to do something a lot, we're going to make it a function. We're going to make it simple enough to read and understand, and we're going to use it. So where can we get web content from? Anywhere we want. We've learned a lot of ways about generating textual information over the last couple weeks. We can use these to create all kinds of web pages, grabbing information out of directories using the OS module, grabbing info out of other web pages, random sentences, generating web pages from database, and so on and so forth. So what about generating a sample page? So in this example, we pass in the directory. It opens the samples.html file. and it writes from the directory. Now let's make a string that will be all in the body. It does the same thing. And let's just see if we have an example of what this looks like. So what this does is it goes through um, all the files. So in this line here, it reads all the files in the directory that you give it. And if the file ends with a JPEG, we actually print out the file. We actually print out the file size, or the file name, I mean, and we actually print the picture as well. And you can see all that's done there. Oops. So it's actually it's generating the HTML again. So then when we run it, and then we can actually see how all that looks. So homepage generated with random taglines. Just another example of something you can do. So thought experiment time generation. Imagine that you could have this program run every 30 minutes and immediately copy FTP the result up to your web page. The temperature would be updated every 30 minutes. A random sentence could be generated every 30 minutes. You could do this now. Most operating systems have some way to do tasks like this. See the scheduled task control panel in Windows, or the cron tab in Mac and Linux. You've seen how to do FTP manually or automatically. Second thought experiment. Look how complicated it's getting. On the right is all the code for the homepage program. It barely fits on the screen at 8-point size font. But what we have to worry about, or but what, sorry, but we only had to worry about a dozen lines of it. Why? We used more functions that allow us to hide away detail that we don't want to see anymore. Information can come from anywhere, but it mostly comes from databases. Every major website generates its web page from a database. We can add news to the homepage. So why is a database useful for a big website? For CNN, for example, they can have multiple authors and editors creating multiple stories distributed all over the network. You can pull the content automatically via a program and merge all the stories into a big website. It works similarly for other kinds of large websites. Amazon.com, where do you think their catalog and review is stored? eBay.com, where do you think all those pictures and descriptions and bid information is stored? Why databases? Rather, why not just use files? Why do we care about using some extra software for storing our bytes? Databases provide efficient access to data in a standardized mechanism. Databases are fast. They can be accessed from more than one place in more than one way, and they store relations between data. Databases are fast because of indices. File names are indexed just by name. Usually you care about information that is found by something other than file name. For example, you may care about someone's information identified by last name or by social security number or even birth date or city state of residence. Databases are standardized. There are many different standard databases. In the Unix and open source markets, BSDDB, GDBM, or MySQL. In the commercial markets, Microsoft Access, Informix, Oracle, or Sybase. Information stored in a standard database can be accessed and manipulated via many different tools and languages. Databases store relations. Recall our list representation of pixels. It was just a list of 5 numbers. Who knew that the first 2 numbers were XY and the last 3 were RGB values? Only us. It wasn't recorded anywhere. But databases can store names for the fields of data. They can store which fields are important and thus index for rapid access, and how fields are related. That each pixel has 3 color components, that each student has 1 transcript. Powerful relational databases. Modern databases are mostly relational. Relational databases store information in tables where columns of information are named and rows of data are assumed to be related. You can work with multiple tables to store complex relationships. So here's a simple table. We have a column for name, we have a column for age, and we insert 3 rows, Mark, Matthew, and Brian. And the implied relation of this row is that Mark is 40 years old, right? Because the row has the relation. More complex data, for example, we have class1.jpg and the picture ID is P1. And we see that Katie has a student ID of S1. And then there's a relationship down on the bottom of picture ID and student ID, right? So we can assume, based on this relationship, that student S1 is in picture ID, P1. So then that would mean that Katie is in class 1 picture. This would mean that Brittany is in class 1 as well, whereas Carrie is in class 2 picture. So how to use complex tables. What picture is Brittany in? Well, we're going to look Brittany up by her ID like we just did in the student table. And we see that Brittany is S2. Then look in the corresponding picture ID in the picture ID student ID table. And then look up the picture in the picture table. So we can see that Brittany is in class 1. Another use, who is in the class 1 JPEG? Look up the picture, look up the corresponding picture ID, look at the student names, and we can see that it's Katie and Brittany. So that's all that this chapter includes. We learned quite a bit about HTML, not so much about Python this time, but a lot about HTML, how to do it. Again, we can use W3 Schools to go through some examples. We finished this chapter by going through databases and just pretty much a high level of what they are. And you won't use them in this course, but it's definitely good to be familiar with them. I think some of your jobs do entail some kind of SQL, MySQL, Postgres, something. They use some kind of relational databases, so it's good to know. It's good to have in your back pocket. So just as long as you're familiar with it, it's great to it's great knowledge. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And thanks for watching. Thanks, guys.